Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about Christianity. There's a lot of stuff. Let's just get right to it. Okay. The history of Christianity, of course, begins with the life of Jesus of Galilee, or sometimes known as Jesus of Nazareth. As far as historical documents are concerned, I don't have a whole heck of a lot for you. The evidence points to him being born around the year 4 BCE. His mother was Mary. His earthly or adoptive father was Joseph, and I'm done. Yes, I could talk about the biblical stories, which we'll have time in class to get through those, but in as far as historical sources are concerned, we know nothing of his early life. It's not till he's 30 that all of a sudden he starts popping up on our historical radar again, that we have actual documents here. What we know is Jesus was a traveling preacher. Perhaps he was even a rabbi. He was devoutly Jewish, and what he felt is that people had kind of gotten away from the message of God, and he wanted to get them back to it. And so he travels all around Judea, or modern day Israel. And the first thing he really starts to do is gather some key followers, about 12 or 13 of them. Biblically, we get all their names. The most important is going to be Peter. And these men will help support him and follow him around. And it's a relatively small movement initially, but then Jesus is credited, or does, depending on your angle on it, start to perform miracles. These miracles were walking on water, these miracles were feeding people, these miracles were healing the sick. And then the biggest miracle is he's credited at least one time with raising a man by the name of Lazarus from the dead. Now, this gets him increased attention, that people are starting to be drawn to him. People want to know who this guy is. I mean, I would want to know somebody who raised folks from the dead. And it's those miracles that start to bring him more and more followers. And then from there, we start to get a lot more in the way of increased attention, so he's able to spread his message, which I'll talk about in a minute. Then at one point, for a short while, we have evidence that he disappears. We're not exactly sure why. Biblically, he goes on a journey that all religious figures might go on, and we'll talk about that a bunch in class. But then he comes back to preach some more. Now, what is this guy talking about? First and foremost, he is devoutly Jewish. He talks about the ideas of Yahweh, of one God, of following the Ten Commandments, of making sure that you take care of people. But the biggest idea, and this is Jesus' most unique philosophical idea, and that is the idea of nonviolence. That Jesus felt that under no circumstances should you ever use violence. Now, where he's different is not only should you never actually strike someone or even say something mean to him. For Jesus, that was violence. But if someone attacks you, that you shouldn't use violence either. You never defend yourself. The idea that he said, according to the Bible, which was, if your enemy strikes your cheek, you offer him the other. This ultimate nonviolence would prove to be the basis of the ideas of both Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. in the 20th century that would prove to be very impactful. We wish more people did this. The world might be a more safer place and a more nice place, but nonetheless, that's his biggest idea, nonviolence no matter what the occasion. He's also big on social justice and the acceptance. The idea of Jesus was a steward, that he is there to protect people, that he is there to help others, the poor, the sick, the downtrodden. And he felt that people had gotten away with that. In the wealth of Rome, that's all we kind of cared about, was wealth and status. And his acceptance of all people, that God loves all people no matter what your background, no matter if you are a prostitute or a soldier or a tax collector or a thief. Even these people that were generally hated in the ancient world, Jesus found a way to accept all of them. So this idea of ultimate acceptance, helping the downtrodden, and nonviolence is what made him so popular. And it's at that point that he starts to gain lots of followers, and eventually he comes to Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the center of his religion. It was the place that he felt that he needed to make this change, and he comes there, and not a lot of people like him. The Romans don't like him, the Jewish elders or the high priests don't like him, and then you start to get this idea that he's the Son of God spread around. The fact of the matter is Jesus by this point had thousands of followers, and the elders of the Jewish temple, as well as, and most in particular, the Romans, viewed him as a threat. And what do you do with a threat when you're in power? You get rid of the threat. Eventually, Jesus is arrested by Pontius Pilate, who was the Roman governor of Judea. He is then put on trial and he is executed. Now, I have here the facts. This is important to understand because for many years the persecution of the Jews has been based on the idea that the Jews killed Jesus. The Jews did not kill Jesus. He was arrested by the Romans, he was put on trial by the Romans, he was sentenced by the Romans, and then he was crucified by the Romans. This is crucial. You need to understand this. The Jews did not do this. Now, were there many Jewish elders or Jews in power that were happy to see him go? Absolutely. But nonetheless, Jesus, then at the age of 33, is dead. And for a while, his religion goes underground. I have here preaching of the apostles. You know, when you see your spiritual leader and a guy that you view as the Son of God dead, it kind of makes you nervous. So most of the apostles would continue to preach to other Jews and Jews only and keep it secret, if you will. The guy that changes all of that is the Apostle Paul. Some people could actually argue that Paul is more important than Jesus, but of course you don't have Christianity without Jesus. But it is Paul that really makes Christianity what it is today. His original name was Saul of Tarsus, and according to the stories that are in the Bible as well as other historical sources, if you see this picture down here, there's Paul, he fell off his horse, that he was on the road from Jerusalem to Damascus, that he fell off his horse, he hit his head, and got a vision of Jesus on this famous painting by Caravaggio over here. At that point, he immediately commits himself to Jesus, he becomes a Christian, and then he finds the apostles. The apostles really didn't like Paul that much, and primarily because he decided that he was going to travel on the Roman roads and preach to everyone. Paul is probably the most important guy for the spread of Christianity because it was Paul that made the first decision and effort to spread Christianity outside of Judaism. And the reason why Christianity is the largest religion in the world today is that this is a religion that they actively seek converts, that the priests and other holy men would travel around the world seeking to convert people to Christianity. And that's why there's around 1.4 billion of them today. Now, there are a variety of different ideas that he preaches that we'll get in together, but the other thing that you need to know about Paul is that he basically structures the religion. About 1/3, if not more, of the New Testament, which is the basis of the Christian Bible, was written by Paul. We're pretty sure about this, and so you take a guy who not only structures the religion, then he spreads it outward. You can't beat his influence for that. He's the most important single individual in Christianity aside from Jesus. What also helped the church is that it was very organized. First, it was kind of small and informal. A lot of them had to hide. The apostles would then model it kind of after Judaism as they start to meet in kind of synagogue-esque type groups. And then they started to build churches, although the Romans not a fan of them. So they used a secret symbol to tell others where they were at. That's why on the top right you see the fish there, the ichthys, which when translated from Greek means Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. That would be on the outside of those early churches, so if you were a Christian, you knew where to go. Peter is crucial here because what made this church so successful that it was organized? You would eventually have Peter as the first pope. They kind of model themselves after the Roman imperial structure. Peter is the pope, as you see him pictured there. He is kind of the ruler, if you will, of the religion. Underneath Peter, in every major city in the Roman Empire, there would be a bishop, and the bishop's job was to run and organize the religion in the actual cities. Then you would have, after that, the different priests, and it's just like having an emperor, governors, and then local mayors. But of course, these people were heavily persecuted, they were attacked, they were injured in many different cases. Many were killed for their faith, that was them being martyrs. But despite the fact of this persecution, the fact that they did not convert made more people interested in what was it about, and it would spread even further. The key thing was, though, the reign of Constantine. Constantine ruled from around the year 310, 311-ish to 337. He would conquer their empire. You'll learn more about that in the Byzantines. The biggest thing he did was that he passed the Edict of Milan, and that officially legalized Christianity in the empire. He would later convert to Christianity, which would allow it to grow. The other big thing is that he created the Council of Nicaea. Now, the Council of Nicaea is very, very important because what that did was it got all of the bishops of the empire, the Roman Empire, together to figure out exactly what the holy books of Christianity were, and then what the basic belief structure was. And we'll explain what came out of this, but this was really crucial because there were different bishops who had different ideas, and so they came together and they met for about a number of years, but what came out of it was the basic core structure of Christianity. Constantine then paid for missionaries to travel around the world to spread the religion. His mother Helena was also very important for that. She was a devout Christian that helped to organize expeditions. He then built some or commissioned some of the holiest sites in Christianity, which I'll show you a couple pictures in a minute. And it's from this point that Christianity takes off. What you have here is the most important site of Christianity. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This church is said to have been built on the spot where Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem, and it's probably pretty close to the spot. This on the left is the Church of the Nativity, where Jesus was said to have been born. We're not 100% sure of this one. And on the right is the Church of All Nations, or the Mount of Olives, saying where Jesus gave his most famous sermons. And in the end, what you have is a remarkable story of a religion that went from a small kind of sect of persecuted people to eventually rising to become the largest religion in the world today. All right, make sure you get your comments, your questions, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.